Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our post-race media availabilities. We are now joined by two members of our race-winning team, Walter Czarnecki, Vice Chairman of Team Penske, and Crew Chief of the number 22, Paul Wolfe. Gentlemen, not a bad way to start the playoffs. Walter, what does this mean for Team Penske to enter the playoffs with a win? And Paul, if you would just take us through those last few laps from your perspective.
Thank you. Well, before I answer that question, on behalf of Team Penske, I want to dedicate this win and this race to the memory of a gentleman named Roy McCauley. Some of you may know Roy. Roy was with our organization for 20 years, started as a race engineer, was a crew chief for Ryan Newman, and then became our assembly shop manager in 2010 and served in that role until about 2 weeks ago when he passed away. So this one's for Roy McCauley on behalf of the whole team. But how does it get any better than this, to start the playoffs with a win? I was telling Joey in Victory Lane that I thought his experience really showed. He hung back. He had a great race car. We had three great race cars, as you saw. Blaney coming from the back to finish second, and Austin was strong all day long. I think he finished in the top 10 as well. But I think that Paul did a tremendous job, as he always does, making that call in the third stage to leave Joey out, and he can speak more about that. And then Joey did the rest, managing fuel until his crew chief said it's time to go, and he did. So that pretty well summarizes it. But a great team effort on behalf of Team Penske, and a great way to go to Watkins Glen next week.
And Paul, if you would just take us through those last few laps from your perspective.
Yeah, so like Walt had said, obviously there was came down to fuel mileage and what we were able to do throughout that stage. I've got my engineers on the box that have gotten really good at calculating the mileage and understanding, what Joey's doing out there on the track. And for Joey, as we've talked plenty of times pre-race, it's, he just needs to have the information. And it's with his experience and what he can do behind the wheel, if you give him the information, he can execute it for you. So we understood what we were able to do early in the race and save fuel to give him an idea of what we expected and what we needed in that third stage, and that put ourselves in a good enough position there towards the end when we could go hard, and then understanding how much we had saved to go into the green-white checker situation that we thought was highly likely. So just a total team effort when we comes down to fuel mileage like it did, no different than Nashville earlier this year for us. So it's not how you always want to win them, but we'll take them when we can.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up to questions now. Just a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will get a wireless microphone to you. We will start with Jordan and then go to Jenna and Jacob.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. Questions for Paul. On that last restart there, you've got Logano in front, Blaney's right behind him. There was some radio communication about let's execute the plan here that we talked about earlier. What was that plan?
Well, I think, as we come to these tracks, whether it's here or Daytona, Talladega, super speedway style racetracks where, a teammate is so important to being able to win like we did today or have good finishes, I think, we do a good job as a company, making sure everyone understands what the expectations and how things should play out at the end of the race. And I think all the drivers have their feedback of what they think it takes to win these races and what types of moves. And I think there's a lot of good dialogue pre-race, understanding that, we know we have fast cars and it comes down to the end of these races, it's highly likely that it's going to be some of our cars at the front of the field, and just making sure we've talked through a lot of scenarios that can happen to make sure we can execute it properly and make sure one Penske car wins the race. And I think it just goes back to the great teamwork and communication leading up to this.
And this is questions for both of you. What is it about super speedway races in general that Penske is so strong in? I mean, typically, today's a perfect example. Blaney wins a stage, Cindric wins a stage, you guys win the race. But every single super speedway is just about, you guys are always in the mix. Why is that?
Well, there's multiple reasons. I mean, one is the Ford Mustang right now. The aero package we have is, they're very fast on these style of racetracks. The downforce drag, where that level is on these cars. As you see, other Fords are fast. You kind of can look at qualifying and understand, when you see the Fords up front and qualifying. So these cars right now, the way our body is, lends to fast cars, and then like I said, you put experienced drivers and drivers that work really well together and communicate. And I mean, Austin's doesn't have nearly the experience that Joey and Ryan do, but I think the way they all work together and communicate and learn from one another, speeds that process up and makes it where all our guys are really good now. And I think it's all the hard work they put in understanding this style of racing, and then we're able to give them fast cars. And obviously you put those two together, and it's a pretty good combination.
Jenna Fryer, AP. One of the first things that Joey said after the race was, hold on, let me read it back. When it is playoff time, it is our time. What does he mean by that, and how does he have that belief in himself that especially after getting eliminated last year in the first round?
Yeah, I think confidence in his team, our experience, what we've been able to do in the past in big moments, big situations where there's a lot on the line. And I said that to some people earlier this week that when we get to playoff time, like, worrying about is Joey Logano going to be performing where I need him to be is the last thing on my mind. Like, when it's playoff time, he's going to show up and give you all he's got and can handle situations like this. If anything, he thrives on this. He loves these big moments like this and is able to somehow get to another level of performance when you get to these situations. So, and I think just the experience level, obviously I've been doing this a long time now with him and then my experience prior with Brad. So we've been there, done that, and we know how to do it. So I think, there's teams that have more speed at times, but I think we take our experience and try to use that as our strength and move us through these playoffs. And I think it's very, very likely that we will continue to move on. We haven't discussed that. No, we don't really talk a whole lot about stats. I guess maybe that's probably why we hadn't really thought about it or realized it. Maybe. Yep.
Go ahead,
Jacob Zillman, Raceface Digital. Kind of continuing on that train of thought from what Jenna asked Paul, and you kind of said it. Kyle Petty did too on the NBC broadcast about how Joey's a big time, big race driver, that he steps up in those moments. What qualities in him do you see that kind of reflects that, whether it's driving style, his mental game? I mean, what is it about Joey Logano that kind of makes him that guy that can step up?
Well, it's the mental game for sure. I mean, there's guys that can handle the pressure situations and not make mistakes, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Obviously, he's capable from the driving standpoint, but it's the mental game, and you'll see guys that make mistakes when they get in these moments, whether it's on a restart or making bad decisions or wrong moves, especially this style of racing where it's obviously we had our teammate with us, but we knew the correct moves to make and we were able to execute them. And there's guys that obviously do better at it than others, and he's proven time and time again that he's one of the elite guys when it comes down to the mental aspect of this and being able to execute on the big stage.
Okay, let's go to Mark in the back.
I have two questions, first for Paul and then for your neighbor next door. Paul, last year you don't make the playoffs, so did you use that as fuel for your team this year going into round one, or kind of like the warning in the fear, like, look, we've been warned once, if we not on our A game. How did you use it? Was fuel or fear that got this team ready for round one?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know if I could say it's one or the other for sure. I think, a message, to the guys this week was, we're capable of doing this, but it's going to take everyone, almost perfect, right? Like no mistakes. And that's really what got us out so early last year. And obviously the wreck at Bristol, which was out of our control, but leading up to Bristol, we should have had ourselves in a better situation, right? You can always look at the last race, but it's what happened leading up to that, right? And I think, our goal was take it one race at a time, but make sure we're maximizing what we're capable of. And that may not be winning that day, right? That may not be the fastest pit stop on pit road, but understand what our goal is for the day, for the race, and make sure we maximize it. And then if we can do that in each race, then we could find ourselves into the next round. Obviously, it was nice to capitalize here. We knew this was a race we could win. We've shown the speed at this style of racetrack. Joey's shown he's capable. So you kind of take it race by race and understand your strengths and weaknesses and make sure you execute on those.
And for the organization, Team Penske, you guys have so many big moments year after year, so many other motorsports programs that you have. What's it like to be involved in an organization that just has all these big moments all the time?
It's all about the people. It's all about the Paul Wolfes and the Joey Loganos and the Will Powers and everybody else that is part of it. I think that from an organizational standpoint, we've tried to do our best to, first of all, bring the very best people into the organization. I mentioned Roy McCauley a little bit ago. Roy started with us 20 years ago. 20 years later, he was still with the company. And there are stories like that throughout the organization. It's building on that culture. It's building that teamwork. We don't change the starting lineup. Everybody knows what the expectations are. Because somebody has a bad race, we don't put them on the bench. We bring them back and go to the next game with that same mindset that we have an opportunity to win. If we feel, as Paul said, if we feel we can win a race, we'll do our best to do it. If we've got a third-place car, they realize that that's the expectation, and that's what they should do. So that's a pretty broad statement, but again, it's all part of the culture.
Go to Bob Pockers.
Bob Pockers, Fox Sports. I have one for each. First for Paul, just coming into the playoffs, you're 14th or 15th in regular season points. I mean, does it matter? Like, and did you feel like you have enough on the intermediates and Martinsville to get out of the third round, if you get there, assuming you get there?
Yeah, are you asking from a points perspective that I feel like we have enough points to
No, I'm
advance
asking,
our
do you
way?
feel like you're strong enough?
Oh, from a speed perspective? Yeah, I mean, I think the intermediates are for sure our weakness. But I think there's the way it mixes up, I think there's opportunity, and we've continued to try to find more speed at those tracks. I think we've closed the gap some. Am I going to sit here and say that we're going to have the best cars when we go to those tracks? No, but like I said before, we got to play to our strengths, and without mistakes, I think we have enough speed to make it, and that's really where we're at this point is, get into each round, minimize the mistakes, and get all we can each day, and I think we can do it.
And Walt, what do you think your organization's chances are of sweeping both the IndyCar and Cup titles?
Well, I think realistically, Bob, next week at Nashville, it's going to be an uphill climb. I mean, 33-point deficit, but look, we saw what happened at Milwaukee. So anything can happen. I'm not discounting Will. I think that Scotty is, if Palou starts the race, Scotty is automatically eliminated. But never say never. As far as this championship's concerned, this is a great way to start. We'll worry about Watkins Glen and go from there.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming in, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.